Hey, what's up everyone? We are Los Gringos TV. Four North American gringos who have fully immersed ourselves in the Latin American culture have become digital influencers in Spanish, and today we want to give you a video of how we learn Spanish.
I've actually been speaking Spanish since 2016.
I've been speaking Spanish for 10 years.
I've been speaking Spanish since 2005. It's now 2020, so 15 years.
Híjole, ¿cuántos años tienes, abuelito? Chavo ruco. I've been speaking Spanish since 2013, so coming up on 7 years. September 2013 is when I moved to Latin America, Costa Rica. Pura vida, mine.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start out. So I've been practicing Spanish pretty intensively for about the last 15 years of my life. I really started in 2004. I guess let me kind of just start off from the very, very beginning. I went to an elementary school that was very multinational. It had a lot of Latinos, recién llegados, people who had just arrived in the United States. So they decided to teach us basic Spanish 30 minutes every week. I got to high school and I moved further outside of the city. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And there I realized that I kind of had an advantage compared to the kids of the new school that I'd moved to because no one had this experience, this exposure to Spanish when they were younger. I felt a little bit confident. And so having that, exposure when I was younger, that really gave me the confidence I needed to be able to, excel and want to do better. Get to college, I'd met a guy who was a friend of mine. He thought I had the desire, but I needed to be tutored a little bit. He taught me one-on-one here and there. But more importantly, it was when I moved to Buenos Aires, Argentina. I lived there off and on over 8.5 years. Immersing myself in the culture was what, really took it to the level that it is today. Now I speak like a porteño argentino. When I was in Atlanta, actually, I spoke like a Mexicano because all my friends were from Mexico, but then I converted. Sorry, Far. It's all good.
Está bien, carnal.
But what I would have to tell you guys when it comes to learning a language is, number one, you have to obsess. You have to make this your top priority. If you're not thinking about this constantly, you're gonna lose inspiration, you're gonna lose drive, you're gonna lose kind of this snowball effect that builds on top of itself. And then most importantly, you can't be afraid. You can't be afraid. We learned as adults, and as you get older, it gets harder and harder. And obviously as an adult, you know who you are, you're comfortable with yourself, and you can speak perfect in your native language. But speaking another language, that's the true test. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. You have to know you're gonna speak terribly for at least like a year to 2 years and be okay with that and comfortable with that. And just know that you're not gonna make the same mistake twice and just get better every single time. If indeed a year and a half, 2 years have passed and you don't see yourself advancing, then maybe, yeah, that's when you get upset with yourself and figure out a new hobby. Dedication, make it your top priority, and just, you can't be afraid to make mistakes. That's what it's all about. Yeah, throw yourself out there.
Ford, what do you think?
Yeah, basically, I also learned Spanish through full immersion in Latin America. Now I'm known as kind of like the gringo mexicano, but I actually started learning Spanish in Costa Rica in 2013. And I say I started learning Spanish then because that's when I really, really went for it and committed myself to it. I, like Dustin, also took Spanish classes in high school and even in college. But unfortunately, our foreign language requirements in the United States are kind of a joke. Joke in the sense that most of the time you have a teacher who's also a gringo. You have textbooks that are approved by American education boards, and you're obviously in that class in the United States with other gringos, other Americans. So you leave that class and you switch straight back to English. Full immersion for me was the way. And when I went to Costa Rica, I went and I lived with a family for 6 months. I changed everything to Spanish. I changed my phone to Spanish, my Facebook to Spanish. All the news I consumed on the television and the newspapers was in Spanish. And I limited myself, and this is key. It's key for me, and I recommend it to anyone else. I limited my interactions with English speakers and with the English language in general. I limited myself to calling friends and family back home. I limited myself to meeting tourists in Costa Rica. And you know what? It's a huge sacrifice. And I will be honest with you guys and transparent, I was kind of lonely, a little sad for a couple months because the human being, we have an inherent desire to communicate and to express ourselves. When you take that away from a human being, it's hard to be fulfilled in everyday life. I was living a life for many months, I would say probably 3 to 4 months in Costa Rica, where I felt not fully fulfilled because I was forcing myself to speak Spanish. I could not tell jokes. I could not pick up on the sarcasm. I couldn't tell stories. I'm a big storyteller. But I never was too bashful to not try. I always tried. And when you try, Latinos and the speakers of that secondary language you're trying to speak, they'll appreciate it and they'll help you out. But there for a while, I completely isolated myself. And it was a huge sacrifice. I sacrificed my happiness, but finally I broke through after a couple months, and it is completely worth it. But you have to limit English speaking opportunities, because there's many people that go to Latin America and they enroll in classes, intensive classes, they live with families, but then when they get out, they go hang out with other gringos and other English speakers because that's what's comfortable and fulfilling to them. Right, Chad? Did you experience some of that in your travels?
Exactly. That's actually the exact reason I learned Spanish, because I learned from my previous mistakes. I took Spanish in high school. You know, we just take the class to get the grade, never really had any interest in learning the language. And I actually, after that, studied abroad. I did a double semester, one in Barcelona and one in Buenos Aires. Unfortunately, my school was 100% Americans. So yeah, we'd go to class, we'd study Spanish an hour maybe a day. But right after that, we're going back to a group of 20 guys, broing it out, bro hype culture. I mean, it was a great experience, but after that, I really lost touch with the Spanish language. I learned a little bit of vocabulary in Buenos Aires, but I realized when I fast forwarded the clock about 7 years to a trip I took to Colombia, I realized that when I was in Colombia, I could not communicate with the locals, and it really made me angry. I loved Colombia so much, and I was so mad at myself for not being able to speak with the locals, that I went home and I decided to try to learn Spanish on my own. I kept in touch with a few people I met there through WhatsApp, and we practiced talking on messages, but I also downloaded Duolingo and I got some books to study on my own. So like Ford said, I learned from that immersion mistake, being around too many gringos before, and when I decided to quit my job and start a backpacking trip around South America 6 months later after that first Colombia trip, I was by myself, and I started in Venezuela, and now 4 years later, I can speak Spanish. I know Spanish very well. To this point, I have visited every Spanish-speaking country in Latin America. Still working on my pronunciation every day. I still have by far the hardest gringo accent out of everybody here, with a hint of Paraguayan accent because I've spent more time in Paraguay and they have the hard R. Ellos saben hablar así. What I did on that backpack trip was I stopped. Going to Venezuela was a good place to start because there are no foreigners there. So I was only with Venezuelans for a straight month, and then I went to Cuba, where also I was mostly only with natives. And from there, another thing that I used to learn was I started listening to Latin music. I actually really didn't like it at first, just because I didn't understand it.
Different.
Yeah, it's different on the ears, and you don't know what they're saying. But after really starting to try to get into it and kind of learn the music, I started printing off lyrics, copy and pasting lyrics in my phone. And I would memorize those lyrics to the songs that I liked. And we were talking about our aha moments when we realized that we really understand a language. That happened for me when I was in Cali, Colombia at a Nicky Jam concert, reggaetonero. And I could understand everything he was saying, perfectly clear. Other tips I learned along the way throughout my travels is to try to stay out of hostels, because in hostels, that's a pure English environment. Yeah. Try to stay with families. If you can, try to date a girl or a guy who's a native speaker from that country, because that way you're going to be surrounded by his or her friends and family, and you'll be forced to speak in that foreign language. Other than that, Clayton, you have probably the craziest experience of how you learned Spanish on the fly.
Just like everyone else has mentioned, I was fully immersed. I served as a missionary for my church, as a volunteer service mission down in Peru, and I was sent there. And obviously, when you're 20 years old and you arrive in a country that doesn't speak a language that you speak, you feel inadequate. I definitely felt like a toddler stuck in a 20-year-old's body because, like Ford said, I couldn't express myself. I wanted to communicate with everyone so bad. I am a funny person. I like to joke around, and I couldn't do that. Obviously, when you're learning a new language, that happens. And in my missionary service, you're placed with someone. In my case, I was placed with a native speaker. He was from Guatemala. And it's very different to wake up in Salt Lake City than to wake up in a neighborhood in Arequipa, Peru, where no gringo, no tourist is gonna go, where you're on dirt floors, tin roofs. Sometimes there's water, sometimes there's not access to water, sometimes there's hours with electricity, sometimes there's not. And so it was an awesome opportunity to learn. And I decided to do what Ford did, and I just decided to shut off my English world. I decided to focus on Spanish, and I made a promise that I would. And I remember walking through the streets, listening to sounds and mimicking sounds and accents and tones and intonations. Throw yourself out there, like Dustin said, and I started doing that. And that's why I really love Peruvian Spanish. I really love jergas, because when you learn Spanish in the street, that's how you learn, off of people and those connections, those memories. And it was super special to me, and I always remember that. I've been learning Spanish for 10 years now as well, and I love it. And we've talked about that language learning is kind of like life. Life is like a big book. And if you only learn one language, you kind of just focus on one chapter. And if you focus on a different language, you open up a different chapter to life. And one tip I had was I would read out loud with my companion, the Guatemalan. And I remember, my tip in this video will be, please invite people when you start learning a language to correct you. Do not get offended, be open to it, welcome it. It's the best thing when you can read out loud and someone can sit there and they can correct you. So don't get offended by it, don't get upset. It's actually the best thing to have that attitude of throwing yourself out there and letting people correct you. And I remember my aha moment when we were sitting in a conference, we were watching video, and I literally thought it was in English because I understood everything. So I leaned over to my companion, I was like, yo, I think we forgot to switch the language options. And he looked at me and he's like, "Yo, tú estás loco? Okay." And I was like, no. And I noticed that everyone was paying attention. If it was in English, everyone would be freaking out because they wouldn't be able to understand. And it was like a click in my head. I'll never forget it. I understood everything. And it's kind of like what Chad said at the Nicky Jam concert. It was a super cool moment. And I think we wanted to just do this video because we're very passionate about Spanish and we're very, very open to telling people to do it. Learn another language, whether it's Spanish or not. And obviously full immersion is the way to go, but also throwing yourself out there and not being afraid to be corrected is the attitude.
Try to use a combination of a little bit of everything. The reading out loud, I need to do, still big time, because my pronunciation is bad. But reading out loud, immersing yourself, using language learning apps. There's free language learning apps that are incredible, like Duolingo. Apps that you can pay for, like Babbel and Pimsleur, to really learn at an accelerated rate, which I highly recommend. Music. Yeah. Music is huge.
Yeah, I would say one that we didn't mention either, and as you're learning a language, you got to get more in depth and kind of be more daring. There's like different checkpoints where it's like, are you going to advance past this checkpoint? Did you like lanzarse and try to speak? You're not really trying to speak. Well, you're not going to get past that certain level.
That vocabulary classroom level.
Yeah,
right?
But more importantly, put yourself in exciting, emotional moments. Let's say, for example, and this kind of goes with an anecdote of mine, is where I had my friend teaching me and I would come home from the day and I was like, oh, guess what happened today and ever? And he'd be like, ¿Qué? No entiendo. Háblame en español. And I was like, fuimos y ah! And it was like the worst feeling, but you're pushing yourself to that outer edge of conocimiento, like all the things that you know, and trying to break past that. And you have to put yourself arguing. If you I remember one time I was
fighting with a girlfriend.
Yeah, that one's a good one. I remember I was in
tough one.
You gonna learn today. You're gonna learn real quick.
I was in a negotiation with a big club in Argentina. I ran tours. We ended at this club. I was talking to the owner, and it was this aha moment that I had where I was sitting there. It was 3 a.m. The club goes till 6. He wanted to talk to me as the owner of this tour company, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, what is going on? I'm having an argument with this like mafioso boss at this club in Buenos Aires at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was giving it back to him. I was giving it back to him, yeah. And that's when I really knew. I was like, we got this.
Yeah, I can hold my ground in Spanish.
Yeah, so we encourage you to learn Spanish, to learn another language, and it's important that you guys understand that learning a language never stops. People all the time ask us, how did you learn? Or how long has it been since you learned to speak Spanish? How did you learn Spanish? Like it's past tense, like it's something that was accomplished and checked off. That's not true. I'm still learning Spanish. Sigo aprendiendo español. Seguimos aprendiendo español. We're still learning Spanish every day. It never stops. We make errors all the time. So take heart in that. Take heart in making errors. If you're not making errors, you're not learning. There's some quote, I can't remember if it's by, one of these tech entrepreneur guys. It's like, move fast and break things. You have to have that mentality. You have to go out there like disposed, ready, and dead set on sounding like a fool when you speak. You have to go out there. Look at the bright side, okay? I think it's a shame that our emphasis in the United States on foreign languages is so lack and shoddy and not good. I think that's a shame. But when you as an American, and I'm speaking to gringos here, people from the United States, you really, really make it a passion and a point to make another language. You are saying to the speakers of that language, I care about your culture and your country and your language. And people know this about people from the United States. They know this about gringos. It's a little embarrassing, but we in general don't speak other languages because we're so consumed in our own country. So just the fact that you're learning another language means that you have a global mindset and you value that culture and that language and where they come from. And if you don't have the ability to fully immerse like we did, which no doubt is the best way, and we recommend that. If you can do that, you have to do that. But if you can't do that, we understand that the great majority of people can't. Well, we're gonna make another video for you guys talking about all of the tips and tricks and secrets that you can do in the United States or in an English-speaking country to learn Spanish or another language. So stay tuned for that video, but one of the main things you can do is download and consume quality content in Spanish and bilingual content. And for that reason, pues, we invite you guys to subscribe to our channel, Los Gringos TV, and all the major social media platforms. We're here to help you guys. We're here to create bilingual content and help people learn English and Spanish and improve understanding between all of us. Thanks a lot, guys.
So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Later.
Ciao, ciao.